It looks like that hurricane is one of the biggest in several, maybe decades. It's a monster, Category 4, barreling down. It's hit Haiti today, and that's the poorest country in the whole Western Hemisphere. They're in desperate shape, living on the edge. And not only will they be flooded out by this monster storm, could dump as much as 50 inches of rain, but there's going to be the possibility of flooding when this is over with cholera that's been left by the United Nations troops. And we're doing, the thing we're doing with Operation Blessing is making thousands of gallons of the substance that's needed to kill the cholera virus or bacteria, whatever it is. But it's chlorine, and we're making chlorine to help those people, but boy, oh boy, it's tough, and they need our prayers. Terry.
Yes, and people can give to that
Yeah,
effort
absolutely.
down there. Operation Blessing
Yeah,
is doing that. So we'd love to have you help us do it well and do more of it. Well, the latest projections show that this deadly hurricane could be heading next for the United States East Coast, and Heather Sells has that story.
Hurricane Matthew began hammering Haiti in the early morning hours, the impoverished island nation bracing for the worst. This video of Matthew is seen from the International Space Station, and it shows just how massive it is. The storm is unleashing winds of up to 145 miles an hour. Drenching rains are also underway, along with a dangerous storm surge.
As we know, we're not really prepared for the type of hurricane, but we're doing the best that we can.
So far, Matthew has killed at least 4 people. At this orphanage, workers boarded up windows and moved more than 60 children to the second floor. Forecasters are warning that more than 3 feet of rain could hit parts of Haiti, triggering deadly mudslides. It was just 6 years ago that a disastrous earthquake struck here, and there's great concern about many people still living in makeshift shelters. The storm also poses another deadly threat in the form of disease.
Unfortunately, the storm is going to kill people twice. It's going to kill them now with the wind and the water, the initial impact of it. But within the next couple of weeks, as the floodwaters recede, it's going to leave disease behind, a tsunami of death.
A cholera outbreak hit Haiti hard after the 2010 earthquake. Operation Blessing responded then with chlorine and safe drinking water, and it's doing so again.
Thousands of people have died. Hundreds of thousands of people have suffered this cholera. So what we started doing 5 years ago is manufacturing chlorine. Chlorine that we use typically to disinfect drinking water, but in times like this, we'll be using it for surface disinfection.
Matthew is moving at just 7 miles an hour, which makes it even more dangerous. It's advancing over Haiti today and is blasting eastern Cuba as well, about 50 miles east of the U.S. naval base at Guantanamo. Matthew will likely then move north through the Bahamas, and it may make landfall in the U.S. later this week. In Florida and North Carolina, they're taking no chances. The governors there have already declared states of emergency. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Well, thanks, Heather. You know, the Attorney General of New York is a political hack, it looks like, and he is in the pocket of Hillary Clinton. So he's come out with this thing talking about a technicality of filing documents on the so-called Trump Foundation, which nobody knows anything about. But it's just one more blow. They're doing everything they can politically to destroy this man, and the assault from the left is unbelievable. What are they so afraid of? John Jessup has that story.
Well, Pat, as you were saying, New York's Attorney General has ordered the Trump Foundation to stop fundraising immediately. He says the foundation is not even registered to raise money in the Empire State and accused the Republican nominee of possible fraud. The Trump campaign says the foundation will cooperate with the investigation. That news comes as Hillary Clinton has been mocking Trump's claims of being a genius when it comes to business, saying his nearly $1 billion business loss in 1995 proves he's no genius. But Trump says the tax return proves he knows the tax system better than most, so he knows how to fix it. Meanwhile, his campaign points out that while he may have avoided personal income taxes, he's paid plenty of others. Pat, the campaign saying Trump has paid hundreds of millions of dollars in property and real estate taxes, as well as state and federal taxes and more.
The court said some years ago, Learned Hand, one of the great jurists, said nobody has a duty, much less a moral obligation, to pay any more taxes to the government than what they're supposed to. Nobody has to. And the idea of calling a tax a contribution and investment is just a con. They want to take all the money they can and spend it on wasteful projects to pay off to their buddies. And nobody has to, and certainly nobody has to pay taxes on losses. And people who are in real estate and other enterprises lose money. People lose money in the stock market. And when they do, they don't have to pay taxes on their losses. It's just that simple. You pay taxes when you make money, and you don't pay taxes when you lose money. And many times there can be a project that is big, and you get a huge tax write-off, and that shelters some income over the coming years. But there's no disgrace in not paying more money than you owe. The law is very clear. If the Congress doesn't want what they've got, then they can change the law. But we're law-abiding citizens, and that's the law set out for us. And so businessmen structure their dealings to take advantage of the laws that are on the books. Nothing wrong with that. John?
Pat, the vice presidential candidates square off for their first and only debate tonight. Mike Pence and Tim Kaine are well-matched contenders who aren't afraid to talk about their faith. And tonight's debate is taking place in a part of Virginia that helped transform the nation during the civil rights movement. Jennifer Wishon explains.
Democrat Tim Kaine, Republican Mike Pence, two men with a lot in common. Both served as governors, in Congress, and both were raised Catholic, though Pence is now an evangelical Christian. Both candidates are comfortable talking about their faith. Senator Kaine defies church teachings on abortion, gay marriage, and capital punishment. Governor Pence upset conservatives when he caved to pressure by gay and other activists on a religious freedom law he pushed in Indiana. Tonight, the men square off at Longwood College, a small school in Farmville, Virginia. There's no doubt the pressure is on Governor Pence. After Donald Trump's debate performance and week of unwelcomed headlines, his campaign is relying on Pence to get the GOP ticket back on track. He's been practicing with Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker and rallying with his fellow Hoosiers.
I joined this campaign in a heartbeat because you have nominated a man for president who never quits, who never backs down. He is a fighter. He is a winner.
Kaine prepared by reading and practicing with a Washington attorney. Sunday, he attended his home church in Richmond.
It's intense, but, I'm calm. Things work out the way they're supposed to. I'm calm.
Farmville isn't your typical debate site, but this town and adjoining Prince Edward County changed the nation. It's the birthplace of the civil rights movement. Before there was Selma and Montgomery, students were leading the way right here.
All of us walked out. I feel it was divine intervention to get that many students to follow you out.
Speaks was an 8th grade student in 1951 when she and her classmates walked out of the Moton School to protest inadequate conditions. The court case that followed was rolled into the landmark decision of Brown v. Board of Education, which desegregated America's schools. It was a victory, but in 1959, instead of integrating the schools, Prince Edward County shut them down for 5 years.
I was in a state of shock. It was devastating because school was everything to us in this little small town. There's a recreation, friendship, athletic stuff. Everything was done either in school or through the church.
These former students hope having the eyes of the nation on Farmville will help spread their story of sacrifice and perseverance.
One thing about these candidates coming in here that they need not overlook. They need not overlook that this was a proving ground. The civil rights and education started right here, in this house, right here, in the house of Moton.
It's likely to get some attention. Meanwhile, both candidates will have to do something they're not used to doing in debates, not talk about themselves all the time. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Farmville.
Thanks, Jennifer. New signs of a breakdown in U.S.-Russian relations. The U.S. withdrew from cooperation with Russia over Syria on Monday. saying Russia failed to live up to the agreement for ceasefire and humanitarian aid for the Syrian people. The Obama administration says it regretted Putin's action and described Russia as the main destabilizing power in the region. Meanwhile, Pat, Russian President Vladimir Putin suspended a nuclear treaty with the U.S.
I tell you what, this is very worrisome because the Russians have an arsenal of nukes capable of literally annihilating the United States, and we have an arsenal. Just one of our nuclear submarines has enough nukes to destroy Russia. And so in the old days, the wise heads realized we have MAD, mutual assured destruction, and nobody moved across the line. But Putin is now talking about rattling nuclear weapons. And this is a horrible thought. And now he's trying to move into a vacuum that our president created. The president created a vacuum in the Middle East. If it hadn't been for him, we wouldn't have allowed the Russians in. But they have moved into Syria. And what they want to do is build up or beef up the administration of Bashar Assad. And he is brutal. The killing is brutal. What they're doing in Aleppo and these other cities is just absolutely brutal and horrible. And the Russians were complicit. They've been dropping so-called bunker buster bombs. They've used all kinds of problems, and very possibly they're looking at poisonous gas, mustard gas and stuff like that. It's horrible. No, we can't get involved with them, but we shouldn't have in the first place. But what do you do when you have a president that all the world knows will not take positive action on anything? And he certainly won't call Islamic extremists. He won't use the term. He doesn't dare mention Islam in any of the stuff he says. Doesn't dare do it. Okay. Well, coming up, we have warned you about the dangers of what are called NSAIDs. Non-specific anti-inflammatory devices. Our health reporter is doing a superb job, and here's that story. Here's John.
Pat, people who take NSAIDs, a common type of pain reliever, are at an increased risk of heart failure. That's the finding from new research, and as Lori Johnson explains, this is just the latest red flag about these drugs.
Robert Carnes is one of millions who takes an NSAID for achy joints, sinus pressure, or other types of pain. NSAID is short for non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. NSAIDs include naproxen like Aleve, ibuprofen like Motrin and Advil, and aspirin. NSAIDs also come in prescription strength doses, and those doses are what the study looked into.
A study of 10 million people shows the use of prescription NSAIDs increases the risk of heart failure by 20%. The risk increases with the amount of NSAIDs a person takes, up to 50% for people who take very high doses.
One of the authors of the study said our findings, which focused only on prescription NSAIDs, might apply to over-the-counter NSAIDs as well. Although over-the-counter NSAIDs are typically used at lower doses and for shorter durations, they are sometimes available at the same doses as prescription NSAIDs, and they may be inappropriately overused. This is just the latest of many warnings about NSAIDs. Previous research revealed they are responsible for 16,000 deaths each year and 100,000 hospitalizations, from things like kidney failure, heart attack, stroke, and ulcers. That was Robert's problem. NSAIDs led to his painful ulcers.
That surprised me. I had no clue.
Gastroenterologist Daniel Newman says he sees a lot of patients with serious intestinal bleeding brought on by taking NSAIDs. He says you should be concerned if you
develop a change in the color of your stool, black, tarry bowel movements, you start to have vomiting or nausea, you're throwing up stuff that looks like coffee, black coffee ground-like material. Even in the absence of pain, this could be a sign of intestinal bleeding.
Despite the risks associated with NSAIDs, patients should talk to their doctor before they quit using them, because they do perform the important function of reducing inflammation. But you can often do that just by switching to an anti-inflammatory diet, one high in fresh vegetables and healthy fats, but low in sugar, carbohydrates, and processed foods. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
And Pat, this study reinforces concerns about the public health implications of NSAIDs.
You're looking at Exhibit A. I used to take something that I call happy pills, extra strength, really, Excedrin. And, you know, I used to work out, and every time, before I started lifting weights or whatever, I didn't want my muscles aching, so I took a couple of extra strength Excedrin. And I figured, hey, these are harmless little things, and they make you feel good, and they keep your muscles from hurting when you work it out. So I took them. And then, of course, you see the advertising, just give me my leaves. Have you seen that advertising? Just a couple of leaves, you know, a couple of leaves. Well, that's 500 milligrams of naproxen, and the leaves are loaded. So what did I do? I had a blood test. You know, you have periodic blood tests, and I had one, and the doctor comes out and said, you know, you're anemic. I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, you got to get some iron. Well, how come I've got iron? Well, you must have some bleeding somewhere.
Oh, my.
So we had a test, and indeed, I was way short of iron because those little happy pills were causing bleeding intestinally that I wasn't even aware of. Wow. You don't feel it, you don't see it.
Well, and if you have chronic pain for some reason, I mean, in your scenario, it was when you worked out, but if you have something that's causing chronic muscle pain,
you're taking pain, you feel good.
Yes.
But those leaves are poison. I mean, they really are bad. So, and I took a couple of them. I had something, and I said, all right, I'll take 2 leaves, and that kicked me over the edge. And I had one of those infusion things where you sit there and they pump iron into your blood. Really? And I felt fine, but, you know, the test showed otherwise, that there was internal bleeding. And the doctor said, as we said on that story, as many as 100,000 people may die from intestinal bleeding caused by so-called NSAIDs. And that includes the full gamut of them. And, you know, the trade name, you know, Advil and so forth, it's all the same stuff. It's all ibuprofen, all of it. It's 200 milligrams of ibuprofen, and they have Advil and Motrin and some of the others. And they make believe that they're all special. They're not special. They've all got ibuprofen, 200 milligrams. That's what they all have.
Buyer beware.
But the one that's the deadly one is this. Don't take away my leave. You know, I'm a truck driver and my knees hurt and I got to have my leaves. It's great advertising. It's absolutely sensational. But boy, this stuff, they are killers.
Try to do it Lori's way with.
Lori's great. Oh,
fresh
God bless her.
food.
Okay. We might have saved your life, folks. Stay with us. All right.
Well, it's the
By the way, I'm going to stop you 1 minute. You want to lower your blood pressure, eat dark chocolate, 3 little squares.
Really? You do this every day?
Well, I used to. I don't anymore. But I've got other ways of lowering blood pressure. But I know how you do it. But the other thing is fish oil. Yeah. I take about a teaspoon of that Norwegian cod liver oil every day.
Wonderful. That is good for you.
Well,
it's very rich.
Lowers your blood pressure. Okay. I don't have high blood pressure. I'm happy.
You'd be happy.
I'm happy. All right.